Good morning, everyone. Welcome to CafeYPanDulce. Today is March 20th, and this is a wonderful edition. I believe today is the first day of spring.
Tomorrow.
Actually, spring starts today, but the actual first day is tomorrow. So spring does start today, I think, like at 3 o'clock today. So welcome, everyone. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. Alexa, stop. Wonderful. That's our introduction movie, and we finally found the mariachi station.
I wish my children were as obedient as that.
Hey, you're right. I mean, I think many people do. So let's get started. I am Christian Cano, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful show. We have some great topics we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the rise of white nationalism terrorists. We're also going to be talking about the Jones Act, which very few people know about. I always confuse it with the Logan Act. We're going to be talking about the elections here in Mecklenburg County. There was a Republican chairperson election, and there's also going to be a Democratic Party chairperson election this weekend, and the Libertarians have a meeting as well. I think the Green Party may. I'm not sure if the Constitution Party meets as well. And then we're going to end up talking briefly about the ICE raids updates, and then another very short NCO9 update because a lot has happened. Filing closed last Friday. So once again, I'm Christian Cano. Let's go ahead and introduce everyone with their buttons. We will start to our right.
Oh, good morning. Buenos dias, everyone. I didn't bring a button this morning, but I do have an imaginary one.
That's right.
I have my imaginary button, which is immigration reform, please. And by the way, I'm Ruth Perez, a community advocate for the city of Charlotte. So I'm glad to have y'all here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ruth, and we'll go this way.
My name's Jeff Scott, man about town, candidate in the 9th District for the Libertarian Party. Looking forward to today's discussion, especially on the Jones Act with a special guest that we have, and some of the other topics that are setting everyone's hair on fire.
Everyone's hair on fire. And then we have a special guest, a neighbor of ours visiting. Ma'am, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nancy Wiggins. I serve on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission right now. I'm in my 10th year of service, and I'm here to represent Colette Alston, who is running for chair of the Democratic Party of Mecklenburg County.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wiggins. It's so great to have you here. Before I give you a little bit more bio on you as well, I want to, as we always do, thank our sponsors. We want to thank our Pandulce sponsor once again, Ms. Blau Catering. Heidi Blau is the owner. 704-805-0269. You can find her on Facebook. If it's a business meeting, a quinceañera, an office, or just a wonderful evening with your friends or breakfast with your friends, please consider supporting Blau Catering with Ms. Heidi Blau. She has a wonderful pandulce. This is a time where you guys are welcome to grab some pandulce and eat it if you'd like. That will keep everyone from talking so much when you're eating. And then we also want to remind everyone, if you would like to sponsor one of our future projects here at CafeYPanDulce, not just this show, but we have a lot of other shows that are in the works as well. Please make sure you contact Kali Lily's Event Coordinator and Talent Agency Corporation at 980-477-1513. That's 980-477-1513. We also want to thank our media sponsorships from the other outlets that are showing our show all around the country. So thank you for watching us on Facebook, on your favorite social media apps, later on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Instagram. But more importantly, thank you for reaching out to the fastest growing demographic in Charlotte, in North Carolina, and in America, our LatinX community and their allies between 18 to 45. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And on that note, I believe we'll just go ahead and salute to CafeYPanDulce. So, salute.
Cheers, cheers.
You do have some coffee there, by the way. I
prepared for me.
Sometimes I'm really good.
Sweet.
So, Ms. Wiggins, I understand that you are... you're here to support the candidate that's running for Mecklenburg County chairperson, which I'm very excited about. And I know that you are commissioned with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. You've been there for 10 years. You were president of the Democratic Women of Mecklenburg County in the 1990s. Wow, I didn't know that. You ran for local office twice. You have worked professionally in Latin America as an international commercial real estate broker and consultant, and you also teach political science as an adjunct professor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, thank you. You've got a lot under your. And we found out before the show that you went to school briefly in Texas.
I did.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I have a bachelor's degree from Texas, Arlington.
and she went to school in San Antonio as well.
Wow.
So she
Originally from San
is.
Antonio.
Yes. So we
Don't
we've
mess
got,
with Texas.
Trinity.
So we've got some, and we also have a gentleman who's going to be calling in later. And you want to tell us who that person is briefly
Well, that will be,
to talk about the Jones Act.
that's right.
Sure.
That'll be our Libertarian Party candidate in District 3, where they've got 27 candidates running. I think
Wow.
26.
Wow.
Uh,
And we thought we had a lot.
So
No.
yeah, so there's a big field in the primary. He also faces a primary challenger, and their election's going to be on April 30th. But Tim's a great guy. I got to know him over the past couple years through the party activity that we've been involved with, and he's got an interesting background, and he's going to tell us a little bit about how this law is affecting the coast and port cities and in his particular area. So I'll give a little bit of background on that when the time comes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you, and we're excited to have him. And the reason we do this, and those of us who've been watching this for a while, it allows me to start sharing our feed on all of the social media apps, and it allows you to share our show on your social media apps as well. So thank you for giving me that padded time, so that way I can actually do that. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about the first topic at hand, which is the rise of white nationalist terrorists. You know, this has been on everyone's mind, and it seems like to be a very common occurrence that, not common occurrence, but it's happening more so often here. I've had this conversation since I ran in 2015 and 2016 against Robert Pittenger,
Yes.
where Robert Pittenger was running on a platform of stopping Muslims from coming in here. He even was trying to prevent flights from flying directly here from certain countries that I thought was not appropriate. And I said during a debate with him in Fayetteville that the biggest concern America faces is not terrorists that come from
Other
countries that they say. The biggest terrorists are homegrown domestic terrorists. Many of them tend to be white nationalists. And those, to me, are the biggest threat for democracy.
Ex-Marines, ex-Army,
Yes.
yes.
And so I was wanting to remind us that to me, those are a bigger fear, or bigger threat to our democracy here in the United States. I said it's not the people coming over from the border from Mexico, and I jokingly made a joke that there is no terrorist that's going to struggle 5 days through the desert and then try to jump on a wall and then mingle in with some coyotes and then to do terrorism. They're going to come across Canada on a visa or something. They're not going to go through that kind of commitment because there were these false claims that our border guards were arresting all these terrorists, and they turned out to be not true.
Right.
So the reason I want to talk about this is also because of what happened in New Zealand. So we're going to go very briefly, and this time around our director has told us we have to keep our conversations, and I just already failed the test, to 30 seconds. So everyone's conversations have to be 30 seconds. So who wants to start telling me how they feel about white nationalists? Please, ma'am.
Well, I'm a homegrown person at the table.
Okay.
I've lived in Charlotte all my life. My parents were Southerners, and they were very well educated, and I'm fourth generation college graduate here in the South. But what I would like to talk about is from my international experience. Not only have I worked in Latin America, but I've also worked in Europe, and spent a sizable amount of times in the Balkans. And one of the things that I really learned seriously about was Milosevic. And the way that his pattern of behavior is very similar to Donald Trump's. And it caused a great deal of difficulty. And as you know, we bombed because they were trying to ethnically cleanse. And we bombed them. So when you go to Belgrade, you can't go to a public hospital if you're an American because Bill Clinton bombed them. Just FYI. But I think that it is important to recognize that these people tend to be very antisocial, and they feel like that they've been left behind in this society, and they, rather than accept responsibility for some of that, they put all the responsibility and blame on others.
Sure, sure. So lack of responsibility. You have anything you want to add to the white nationalist movement, or?
Well, I did
I
do.
know- Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I did do a little bit of reading about what happened in New Zealand, and we do know that the killer actually had a manifesto. I did not read the manifesto, but I have a good friend who read it. And so, just to borrow some of his thoughts, he's the great Jeff Tucker, who operates out of the American Institute for Economic Research up in Great Barrington. And he puts the killer straight in the tradition of the alt-right, the what they call the this tradition of white nationalism, but they're also he's very much concerned with reproduction, spontaneous reproduction. The reason he doesn't want, and the reason he was able to kill innocent children, was because he thinks he's doing a service for the cause of for his cause. So it's always interesting, to think about whether or not some of the people who commit acts like this mean what they say and say what they mean. It draws me back to my childhood remembering Charles Manson, because Manson also had an ideal. He had things he wanted to achieve by his horrific crimes, and so some people, they just get crazy and they shoot, but other people, they seem to have a reason, and I think his reasons were very dark. And so, just to wrap this point up, we do need some better form of social harmony that doesn't involve ethnically cleansing the people that we think are somehow causing harm to our race. We need to have very vibrant commercial relations with people. We need to have a more voluntarious form of society.
Ruth, you want to add anything to that?
To me, it's really saddened that we have to put up with that kind of manifestation of hatred. I don't see it as a like you mentioned right now, that they're trying to do it for a purpose. I just think that it's just invading them of hate, especially the way how everything has been happening. Within a week, we had 2 of those. I mean, we have the mosquitoes?
The mosque in New Zealand,
and
then we have
then this one,
a very recent one.
this over the weekend. I think
Yeah,
it
in
was.
Norway.
In
Is that correct?
No, it
it
was
was
in
in
the
Utrecht.
Netherlands.
In
Netherlands,
Netherlands.
Utrecht.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Thank you.
it's very sad, because I mean, they might not know each other,
Yeah.
and yes, it might be for one reason or one purpose, but everything invades them of hate.
Well,
to me, it's just
but
manifestation of hate.
the thing is, you might say that underneath all of his rationalizations and all of his ideas, that there is some kind of burning hate at the root of it. And that's fair, we can argue about that. But he did actually write 87 pages.
Wow.
Like the Unabomber wrote.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so they have ideas, and it's really important to dig into their ideas
Yes.
and figure out what it is that makes them tick.
So they have a platform, they have a plan, they have something structured already, what they're trying to do.
But they also have mental anxieties and problems, which their heads talk them into a lot of
Yes.
these things. And quite frankly, it's sad to say, but we have a certain percentage, and we'll always have a certain percentage of population that fits in this category.
Yes.
And and Steve Bannon, unfortunately, has really, punched
Tapped
the
into
right
it.
button.
Yep.
And when I was working in Europe, and I spent a lot of time in England, you could see the guys who were this disenfranchisement actually, and they would go on these really cheap trips on the airplanes to cities in Europe, and all they would do is drink and go to the coffee shop and go to the bathroom and sit out on the and then come back and drink in a bar
Yeah.
and get on the plane and go home. And they don't equate that with not being productive, you know. And then they
Sure.
resent people who've come from Poland and worked their little tails
Yeah.
off, you know, in the
Yeah.
hotel.
Well, I
Society.
But
Sure.
we have the same problem here.
We do,
Yes, we
we
do.
do, and interesting you say that, Nancy, because one of the things I think what people are concerned about here is because we value free speech so much that there's this fear that how do you, where is that gray area, or how do you don't want to cross the line of violating someone's ability to free speech, but you also have to protect us from people who show patterns that they're going to be doing something. And the concern that I have here is, as you said, I think we've always had crazy people. I don't know how much more to put it. Are people fringy people who have a tendency to kind of go off the cliff. We've always had those individuals.
Sure, on both sides.
Yes, on both
Yes.
sides. But we've always had elected public servants and leaders in our community that have understood that their role, and it may not be an official role they play, is to not fuel that fire, is to try to keep those things calm. And it didn't start with Donald Trump, but it seems to have amplified with him, that he seems to not be playing that role that traditionally has played. And when things like that happen, say something as simple as, this is not acceptable, this is not what we do in America, this is not civil.
But he doesn't care.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah.
He originally started out
Sure.
using this as a platform for
Sure.
his business.
Sure.
And like I was trying to draw the parallel with Milosevic. He, like Milosevic and Hitler and
Sure.
all of these other people, tend to have a very please me, please me, please me.
Sure.
And if you don't, bing, 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 bing,
Yes.
bing. I mean, and you were talking about the freedom of the press.
Mhm.
The budget of our former next door neighbor congressman excludes any money to support NPR
Mhm.
or PBS, and that
Yeah.
just came out in the last few days.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the propaganda coming in, and nobody's watching Fox News. I wonder why not. I don't know about you all, but I read 5 sources of news every day.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't allocate a lot of time to this,
Sorry.
but I do think that we all are concerned about the rise of white nationalist terrorists. I know
Yes.
the Southern Poverty Center has been tracking it, and there's our local stations are going to be doing stories about white nationalists in this area. So everyone stay tuned to WCNC and some of the other stations that are doing stories on those issues. And I guess, my concern is, and I've always had this concern, is that we need elected officials that are in public office, that anytime something happens, they must come out and speak out against it. Even if it's something as simple as, this is not acceptable, this is not what we say as Americans. If they want to use the values word, which I hate when people use the values word, because what's value? Your value or my value? This is not American values. We need this, because I think if we get to a point where we do not condemn these things, it becomes normal. And I just
But
don't
they will
want it to
not
become
do
normal.
it until we get affected.
But we
You
used
notice?
to. We used to
We used to do it before.
We used to have
To have
congressional members that
what is
every
it,
single time.
brotherhood?
Yeah, we used to have congressional members around
Yeah.
the country that anytime anything happened,
And
they
around the
would
world,
immediately
yeah.
make an issue. We stand by whatever. This is not acceptable. Our hearts go out to these individuals. Yeah, I'm tired of hearing my thoughts and prayers go out to gun
No, it's not the
victims.
same.
But at least they would say something, President, whatever, we need to start saying those kind of things. So anyway, that's with white nationalists, and let's go to our next topic, which is going to be the Jones Act. But before we do that, we're going to spend 5 seconds on buttons. If you had a button, what would it be?
Immigration reform, I already said it.
Immigration reform.
Yep.
My button is I am a member of the Progressive Caucus of our Democratic Party. I do believe that the Progressive Caucus is going to save the North Carolina Democratic Party. with our redistricting in the Supreme Court, we'll be looking at our congressional districts on Monday. They'll be hearing oral arguments. I believe after those oral arguments, I believe that the ruling will come out in June that will mandate another. This will be our second redistricting. The first one was on racial bias. This will be on political bias. And once our congressional districts change in North Carolina, it will never be the same. You will not be able to win a congressional district primary unless you are a true Democrat that runs on Democratic values and more likely a progressive Democrat. And we can have many shows on that. So that's mine, and also Medicare for All if you had one.
Jeff Scott, District 9. If you live in District 9, please vote for me.
And we'll talk very briefly about.
I do live in District 9.
Oh,
Excellent.
excellent. And Nancy?
My button is actually on my coffee cup.
Oh, excellent.
And
Perfect.
it's Shape Charlotte. Here in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission, we're very active and we're encouraging every citizen in the city and the county to come out and get involved. We're doing the 2040 plan now. We're also getting the TOD, the Transit-Oriented Districts, approved, through almost finished. And then we have the Unified Development Ordinance, which we will be finishing hopefully by 2021. Everybody needs to participate. We have plenty of things to do, and we graciously do appreciate your service. And also, I'm a Democrat, and I'm supporting Colette.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's good to hear. Listen, I want to do a shout out for some of the people who are watching us. Most people, we looked at our data last week, and most people actually watch us after the show, later on YouTube, and they're, over a glass of wine, so they can say, Christian should have said that, or I can't believe you, or Ruth, let's be on Ruth. Ruth should have said that, or go Ruth, and so forth. But the people that are following us online right now, we want to welcome Mr. Jorge. Welcome. He was our wonderful guest last week with Unity Charlotte, doing some great work. I was able to see some of their staff members and their ambassadors. They do some incredible work. We've got to have Jorge back on here talking about that issue. They do toy supply drives for schools, food drives. They partner with WSOC. They do a lot of wonderful things. It's a really, really good group. Also, one of my neighbors, Ari, hopefully one day we'll have Ari. Ari is a very good friend of my family and watches us. And his client, as we jokingly say, is one of our neighbors, Nadia. Nadia was one of our shows, and we hope to have Nadia. She's Russian-American. And she gave us some great insight into that. So welcome, and all of the other people that are watching us as well. We'll continue to try to do a shout out to you as well. So let's go to the next one, Jones Act. Tell us briefly what the Jones Act is for those of us who confuse it with the Logan Act.
Well, the reason this is an interesting topic, first of all, is that it is affecting people in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, okay.
Okay, and
did I say that right?
Puerto
Rico. And it's been affecting them for quite a while, and let me explain why. So in 1920 there was a law passed called the Jones Act, and it was passed in the wake of national security concerns.
Yep.
Okay.
Go figure. So it meant to control shipping along the U.S. coast, and so it required that ships in America have to be built, owned, manned, and flagged by Americans. So it's really very much a protectionist form of legislation that's lasted all this time. Now,
and as a libertarian, you guys hate protectionism.
Well, but that's why this is a good example, because you can see the effects of it, like as what might have been well intentioned at the time. You can quibble about that. What has it become now? And it's basically strangling Puerto Rico's ability to get liquid natural gas.
Oh, okay.
So there's I got the figures written down here. There's 478 what they call LNG capable liquid natural gas ships that can do that. That can deliver it. None have been built in the U.S. since 1980. In fact, the U.S. doesn't even have the capacity to do that.
Wow.
So about a third of the electricity generation in Puerto Rico comes from natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, other, Barbados and Dominican Republic, for example, are able to get cheaper on the market liquid natural gas for them. So
Sure.
Puerto Rico actually has to buy it from perhaps Trinidad and Tobago and Russia. So I've also, just as a side note, I'm going to be posting a Spanish language
Okay. Explanation of this,
Spanish language explanation.
So
of this.
how is the Jones Act? Not to interrupt you here, but
Sure.
how is the Jones Act denying Puerto Rico from
Access.
because the act prevents vessels from
prevents vessels that are not made in the United States from bringing it.
and
to
because there aren't any vessels, it's a catch-22 kind of
that's
situation.
right. That's
I
right.
see.
So the law is that they requested a waiver against
Of
the
the
law
Jones, okay.
back in December, and so
Okay.
now the Cano Institute, a free market think tank out of DC, is pushing this, and I think there's
Sure.
been legislation introduced by Mike Lee
Okay. Of Texas. Is he North Carolina?
I can't.
Yeah, I know. I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah. It's a senator.
But basically,
Yeah.
the protection is to
Is he congressman?
is well, we can look up Mike.
Sure.
Lee.
Okay.
I just can't remember what state he's from.
Okay.
Uh,
And we have a guest who's going to be calling in about this because I understand that he is familiar with the Jones Act. Because is that impacting his district or just
yeah. So,
how do you become an expert on the Jones Act? That's
well, you don't
just wake up one day or
Well, the thing is, people in Puerto Rico are
Sure.
painfully aware of it, and people in Congress, basically the shipyards
Sure.
and the other carriers who are protected by this, they're very aware of it because they get the benefits.
So
of it.
so they don't want that exception to be made because their fear is if we impact the Jones Act that it will they will no longer have the monopoly, so to speak.
That's
on, Okay, I
That's
see.
right. So Mike Lee is from Utah.
Sure.
Also, let's point out here that we are broadcasting to Noticias Charlotte.
Yes, we are live on Noticia Charlotte. We want to thank them for being one of our collaborative media sponsors, and also Noticia Columbia, South Carolina. So thank you very much. They have about 180,000 followers. So we want to thank them for allowing us to share our views out to them. Plus, of course, the people that normally follow us in Massachusetts, in Miami, in Fort Lauderdale, and El Paso, who just recently joined us in San Antonio. And I understand that we actually had a person in Portland, Oregon,
Wow.
who followed us. And the fact that there are 2 hours or 3 hour time difference means that
yep.
they are on their work or they watch us late at night. We'll find out. Lester Bussey has joined us. Thank you, Lester, for joining us. We hope our conversation is enlightening to you. If you'd like to add to our conversation, please please feel free to comment.
Okay, so let me just introduce Tim Harris, who's on the phone. He's a North Carolina native, and speakerphone is on.
Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Welcome to the program. Yeah, welcome. Jeff is going to give a brief bio on you. Jeff, you want to tell us who he is?
Yeah, Tim's North Carolina native, and he was raised by an adopted family in his early years in the Northeast in New England.
Oh,
He served in the Marine Corps and moved to Youngstown, Ohio, and began working while attending college, working for the offices of James Trafficant of Ohio.
oh,
So who turned out to be
wow.
a crook, and that's when you left, right, Tim? You left when you found out he was a crook.
I did indeed.
Yeah. So
I gotta be careful how to write my bio.
so Tim now works as an IT systems engineer and an entrepreneur, bringing wireless ISP to Eastern North Carolina. So I'm going to put the phone up here so hopefully everyone can hear it. So, Tim, we just had a brief discussion about the Jones Act, and I gave a little overview. We know that the Cano Institute is pushing this, and Mike Lee from Utah is also pushing this reform. Can you tell us your take on it? First of all, tell us briefly about your election, and then go on and tell us about your district and the problems.
Well, this election is a very special election for lots of reasons. North Carolina's 3rd district is a unique district. We cover most of the coastline. most of the coastline above Wilmington, I should say. We have one of North Carolina's only 2 ports, so the Jones Act is of particular significance to us. We have a Jones Act, in fact, affects us a lot here because our port, Morehead City, is a break bulk port. It's a deep water port. Ships come in from foreign ports carrying containers. Those containers need to be broken down because one of the aspects of the Jones Act is that what the Jones Act really says is that you have to have, if you're going to ship from one U.S. port to another, that ship has to be U.S. built, U.S. flagged, U.S. crewed, and U.S. owned.
Okay.
That's an extraordinarily expensive bar to reach for shipping because of our union rules, because of our regulations around shipbuilding, because of our regulations around operations. What this causes is a lot of the ports that do exist on the U.S. coast have rail and intermodal lines attached to them because it's simply cheaper to use rail. If, for example, North Carolina goods if we wanted to ship North Carolina goods out of Morehead City here to, say, Portland, Maine, it's cheaper to do it by rail because it's U.S. port to U.S. port. This is actually what affects Puerto Rico. Is like, for example, as Jeff Scott said, liquid natural gas coming in to Puerto Rico has to come from a foreign port in order for them to be able to get it because of the U.S. port to U.S. port restriction, which means basically we're sending our money overseas. We are, and essentially what we're doing is we're tariffing ourselves. We're saying we're going to make it cheaper for you to buy goods and services from overseas than it is to get it from the United States. There are other islands. Hawaii, for example, has the same problem. It's why life is so expensive in Hawaii. Guam has the same problem. I have family who live on Guam. In fact, Guam it has one less restriction in that the ships don't have to be U.S. built, but they still have to be U.S. flagged, crewed, and owned. And so it's cheaper for people on Guam to buy from China than it is to buy from the United States, which, of course, when the President of the United States comes and slaps tariffs on Chinese goods, instantly skyrockets their cost of living, and they're already living at or below the poverty line already.
Well, this is great information, Tim. You know, Tim and I are both on the same wavelength here, talking about protectionism, in particular with regard to national security issues. National security issues seem to be the source of a lot of this fear, and then it seems to be that there are a lot of people who come in after there's big scares like this to benefit from congressional budgeteering to try to get big favors, whether it's we and Tim and I have talked about this, whether it's selling cybersecurity voting systems to states or selling other products with regard to ICE and immigration, which we're going to be talking about a little later. So the idea that cronies are infesting a lot of our policies is a very critical issue for us. Do you have anything to add that?
It absolutely is a critical issue. It's one of the ways that our regulatory deep state builds and extends itself. In this particular case, it literally was cronyism, and they cast it as national security, and we needed to have shipyards that, were capable of building ships here in the United States. But in reality, what it was welfare for shipbuilders who were already extraordinarily wealthy.
Sure.
Corporate welfare.
Corporate.
Yes, indeed. And to get back actually to Morehead City, this is an issue here that really does affect us because we have to be a break bulk port because they have to break everything down so that we can ship it by rail. We have a lot of natural products that ship out of Morehead City, which go to Europe, for example, pellet wood pellet, because we have a large forestry industry and timber out here. We end up with a lot of wood pellet, and those wood pellets are shipped to Europe, where it turns out they burn them for electric energy. Something I didn't know until recently. In fact, I was surprised by the giant. I asked somebody about these giant piles of wood chips that we have laying around all over the place by the port. They burn them in Europe.
Well, Tim, I'm glad you mentioned wood pellets. We're going to be doing a show on wood pellets because Invenvo, who is one of the big companies that produces those out of Richmond County, they are one of the biggest polluters in our district, in District 9. And even though they have come into the county, the Sierra Club, the Dogwood Club, and a bunch of other groups are really concerned because they're destroying our natural habitat. And the only reason they're sending these wood pellets to Europe is because Europe has these mandate that they have to burn so much fuel, and the fuel burns at only 25% efficiency. And so that's a very interesting conversation. It's one of those situations that they've gone into a very poor community. They built this huge plant, and so as a environmentalist, I'm very concerned about wood pellets. But I know as a libertarian, you want to be able to sell everything.
Your right to pollute ends at my right to breathe.
That's right.
Okay? That's
Nancy, do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I do actually. One of the things I think that we lose sight of, and that is that North Carolina is a very, very strong agricultural state, as is South Carolina.
Yes.
And it brings us into this discussion because some counties are literally trees, and that's the way they make their living.
Yeah.
And Polkton is one, Polk County is one,
Yeah.
and I mean, you know, Myrtle Beach was built by people who own trees, lots of them. And so we have to balance everything that we do.
Yes.
And unfortunately for us, because of the way our bays and Outer Banks operate, we don't have a good port in North Carolina.
And I am so glad you said that. We mentioned this twice on the show in the last 4 months. In 2016, Robert Pittenger and I were discussing the importance of exporting and the importance of expanding our ports and making them deep enough that we can export our products internationally.
Well, the problem is, because I was on the North Carolina Building and Industry Council for a while, the problem is that every time there's a storm, when I was a little girl, it divided a whole island on the Outer Banks. So what we really need to do, I mean, this doesn't help the 3rd District, and I used to sell commercial property out there, so I have a love for it. But it does, one of the things that Charleston did when they finally got their shipyard back from the military after Civil War things about 20 years ago, they decided to build containers that were large enough to go through the expanded Panama Canal. So they're one of the leading ports now. And one of the things that Charlotte did, and we've had some people who've tried to undermine it, we built our intermodal distribution center so that people can bring their product up to Charlotte and get it on planes and trains here. And we've made one little mistake. But the interesting thing for us, and I hope that you all can do something similar to this in District 3, we built it for Charlotte. It is a revenue generator of about and will be almost $2 billion revenue generator. So that relieves our property taxes, and people will be able to afford to maintain their lifestyle here.
That's a great segue. And Tim, I wish we had more time to speak with you, but we only have an hour and 5-minute show because we always go for 5 minutes. But I want to thank you, and Jeff, thank you guys. Do you have anything else you want to say before we move to our next topic?
No, thanks for calling in, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
And we look forward to following your campaign. Can you tell us briefly what your website is?
Yes.
Yes, you can find me at, well, not today, not yet, but you can find me at timharris.org.
timharris.org.
You can follow me on timharris.org.
Great.
You can follow me on Facebook at Elect Tim Harris. Also, the same handle works on Twitter.
That's great.
And I thank you for having me on. It's been a great pleasure, and I'm going to continue watching as you go on this morning.
All right. Well, thank you for being on here. You know, we want to Thank you very much. And as everyone who follows us knows, that we want as many
Thank you, Tim.
diverse opinions from libertarians, green. I'm a Democrat. Of course, I'm going to probably promote more Democrats, but they, that's the great thing about having the show. We invited Republicans, people who don't agree with me, people who do agree with me. I always believe that democracy can only flourish if we have as many diverse voices at the table, so that way we can kind of understand where everyone is coming from. So thank you very much for that. And we're going to switch now to a very important topic that I have been talking about for quite a while. It is the Mecklenburg County Party Chairperson elections. And they're not just electing the chairpersons, they're electing people up and down, from the secretary, the first chair, the second chair, secretary treasurer. The precinct meetings were probably about a month ago, and so I can tell you that this last Saturday, that John Powell, who is a neighbor of mine, who has been very involved in our community, I've seen him at so many events. He did not win his election to become chair. Very, very distraught. But in true gentleman fashion, John Powell posted, every person who's running for office has to, I'm paraphrasing, be honest and so forth. And he said, I did not win. Wow. And he was very professional about it, and we all thanked him for running. Maybe he'll run again in 2 years. And so he did win that one. Another one, the Libertarian Party. You're having your convention this Saturday as well. Is that right? Or no, the next Saturday.
No,
the
no,
30th.
it's coming
this
This
Saturday.
Saturday. And you're running for chair, I believe. Or you are chair?
He is a chair.
Yes, I am the chair, and I'm running for the
Re-election.
Running for re-election.
So Libertarians
I
are
hope
having their.
Yes, I think what I'll do is I'll go in. I don't know that anybody's running against me, but I think what I'm going to do is just go in and confess all my sins over the last year and just tell.
That always works. Yeah, that always
tell
works.
everybody that we're a minor party. We've got a lot of minor party problems.
Okay.
Of keeping volunteers coming in, keeping them organized, keeping them on track.
Sure.
Making sure that we can get some. We're trying to upgrade our swag.
Sure.
Stuff like that.
Well, you guys are doing a great job of keeping the conversation and keeping both parties talking about issues that they probably would not have talked about, especially NCO9, which we're going to get to as well. Our Mecklenburg County Democratic Party is also having elections, and one of the candidates is, you want to talk about that candidate who you're representing?
I certainly do.
Yes.
Colette Alston is currently the secretary for the Mecklenburg County Democratic Party, and she's done some very good, made some very good modernizations about precincts and the way we keep tallying of the votes and getting information dispersed. But she is a candidate for chairperson, and she is a very engaging African American young professional. She's single, for you guys who are interested. But anyway, I'll go on from that. And she is an interesting person, and then she grew up in Durham, and she moved to Charlotte. She started out at North Carolina Central as a student, and she moved to Charlotte because she was working her way through college, and she got a promotion to come here. While she's been here, she's risen to be the director of client relations for a major bank.
Oh, wonderful.
And she also has earned her college diploma and her MBA. So she's a very, very, very talented and engaging person. Some of the things that she wants to do, and this is fundamentally, aside from the fact that she's a great person, that I'm endorsing her, is that she wants to be a chair who is very inclusive. Everybody.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
You're in my list. Thank you. We need to hear that from every leader.
Inclusive.
Yes.
And she is inclusive in the way she acts.
I've seen
And
that.
let me confirm that, because I wrote to her privately, and she responded to me, and we have meetings going.
Excellent.
So.
Excellent. Yeah.
But she also wants to coordinate our activities in Mecklenburg County with those counties around us, particularly the ones that are involved in District 12 and 9. And she supports the district, the party district organizations, and she is currently the secretary of the 12th district.
Oh, wonderful,
wow.
wonderful.
But in the 9th district, she wants to give all the support that she can to Ms. Wallace, who's the chair of the district, and also she wants to develop good relations with the other Democratic chairs in the inclusive counties.
That makes logical sense.
And finally,
It brings
she
a tear to my eye.
Yes.
Oh my God.
and finally, she wants to raise the bar.
Sure.
She wants to make us have good headquarters where everyone is welcome and people can have meetings.
Thank you.
And we can have press releases.
Yes.
And she's going to be an excellent fundraiser.
Well,
And we need that to
I-
coordinate all these activities.
Yes.
listen, everything that she has said when she announced, I was so excited because I have not been a big fan of our current chairperson. And it's no secret that I have not been a big fan of our current chairperson. And as a former candidate and as a possible candidate in 2020, one of the things that those of us who are not currently, it felt and it feels like with our current system, a current chairperson, you're either in the clique or you're not in the clique. And that is something that I never thought I would experience outside of high school. And that has really concerned me because I have seen so many of our wonderful elected Democrats who have had to win in spite of getting support from our Democratic Party. And one of the things that I've always said is all I wanted as a Democrat and as a candidate was just for our Democratic Party chairperson, also for our state party chairperson, whoever, I know Wayne Goodman is there, but whoever runs against him in 2 more years. All I want is whenever people decide to file for office, regardless of what you think of that person or whatever, and filing closes, is to get a call from our county chairperson and say, thank you for filing. I can't endorse anyone. Anything that we can help you with, you need contact with a fundraiser, you need a this. Something as simple as that will show that she or that person will represent everyone.
Yeah.
Well,
And that is what I hope that a new chairperson would do.
one of the things I think that, from a perspective
Sure.
as a political science professor, and I told my students this at Wingate in 2015, I said, Donald Trump is going to get the nomination because the chairman of the Republican National Party did not do a decent job of vetting candidates.
Correct.
So I think that we will find that Colette will be interested in involving and talking with potential candidates and help us get the best
Connected,
people that
yeah.
we can to represent our party
Yeah.
and have an inclusive group and
Sure.
get everybody in
Yeah.
and help them and so on and so
And I
forth.
think
Up and down the ballot.
No, exactly, and and I've said this before, and we're gonna segue to the ice raids, and then very briefly on NCO9 because we may be going over about 5 minutes. What I've said before, and especially with some of our races that we've had, is I understand this natural human belief, and Democrats seems to be the only ones who believe this, that it hurts us if we have more than one person run for an office.
Yes.
That we don't even have that philosophy in the real world. In the real world, we want 10 candidates so we can choose the best of the 10
We want
candidates.
3.
Yeah, 3 candidates. Yeah, that's right. I don't really want 10.
10 candidates.
10 may be too much.
10 gets the Donald Trumps in
That's
there.
right. That's
You
true. That's true.
You
3.
want to vet through
That's a good. I agree with that. I agree. 3 good
Yeah.
candidates, because then what you do is you bring the diversity of those 3 candidates to the excitement of the conversation, and you usually carry that excitement over to your general election.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, if the chairperson does it right and calls all 3 and says, "Hey, thank you for running. Let's make sure that we are what our goal is, and our goal is to
share the
Democrats."
support equally.
Yes, and we're going to have a candidate for. We'd like for you to show up and try to be fair to those candidates and let the delegates or whoever votes on those
Let the
candidates,
process work.
let them work.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, you're more likely for those 3 candidates to say, "I did not win this primary, but I'm going to make sure that a Democrat or whatever gets elected."
Yeah.
When you do it that way, it's something that naturally happens. When you don't do it that way, you're not going to get unity.
No, you're dividing. Yep.
You're dividing. And so that's what I
Yeah.
hope happens on future elections that we do get
You
that.
don't want to extinguish political behavior. There's amazingly big difference between just the spectators and the gladiators.
Yes.
There are very few gladiators, and it's really helpful when the spectators will support them by continuing to be interested
Yes.
in politics and the parties. And supporting parties is important because it does provide us with some functionality. And quite frankly, we used to in the Democratic Party have people of all persuasions involved. And now, unfortunately, I think one of the current White House people have decided that ideology is more important than the needs of the
Yeah.
people.
That's
It's not,
unfortunate.
yeah.
We do have to thank someone, I believe. Why
It
we're
was a
thanking someone?
newspaper, Lauritino, right?
Lawrence.
Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Information.
Lawrence Information.
Informativo.
Lawrence
Informativo.
Informativo from Massachusetts. I want to thank you for joining us and to following us. That's thank you for sharing this information. So get out there and vote if you are a delegate to the Mecklenburg County Democratic Party. The call to convention is this Saturday at East Mecklenburg High School. Registration starts at 9, but the actual event starts at probably 11 or 12.
12.
Is it 12 o'clock? If you're a delegate, go there. If you're a Democrat, you're welcome. We are an open tent party. Go look at the way democracy works. Encourage your friends to support the person. I'm supporting Colette because she has reached out to my family, and she has actually said that she is interested in making sure that everyone is represented equally. I don't know how hard it is for someone to, but that is something that we need.
Yeah.
And more importantly,
Not go by privilege.
Yes.
Not running by privilege.
Just interject.
Sure.
Another good reason for people who are not delegates to come to the conventions is because you get a preview of who wants to run later down because they're
Exactly.
out shaking hands and
Exactly.
talking to people.
How
It's-
dare.
It's really a great experience. And one of the things I love about being a Democrat, even though I have a lot of wonderful things about the Libertarian Party from some of their views, one of the great things I love about our Democrats is we try to, as much as we can, and we don't always succeed, but we try to be an open tent, equality, inclusive party.
Everyone.
And sometimes we don't always succeed, but that truly is in the heart of most Democrats. Now, of course, when you have such a big, diverse tent, you are going to have family challenges and maybe and so forth. But at the end of the day, we're all moving the same way. And what I would really like to see in North Carolina, and I've seen it over the last 10 years start to happen, and I hope it continues, is that this thinking that running for office is only for a select few South Charlotte privileged people. Because there was a time where you could only get elected in Mecklenburg County if you were part of one specific white church, or if you were part of one specific, supported by a specific family. Those days are I hope, moving, and we need more people to represent us who look like us.
Correct.
And so when I see people at these conventions that have been dedicating their lives 15, 20 years as precinct chair people or involved, I want them, they're just as qualified to run. And we need to let them know that you are just as qualified to run as anyone else, and we need to encourage from all age groups. You know, we need to encourage. I don't think anyone is too old or too young to run for office. I just think if you believe in the Democratic platform.
I'd like to just say a couple of things
Sure.
too about good old Democrats, especially in North Carolina. Remember North
Get that
Carolina.
little North Carolina accent when you said that, by the way.
The important thing here is to remember that we have always been strongly protective of our public education
Yes.
system.
Yes.
Because we had one of the first, we had the first public university, and that's critical. We have got an issue with the teachers,
Yes.
and all we want is for people to get a good wage so that they can live and work in harmony. Right now, we have people working too hard, and their families are being
Yes.
destroyed
We-
because they do not have the time to sit around a table like we're doing.
Well,
now.
we are. I mean, we have always been the party of the working class. Even though we have had candidates that seem to be more concerned about corporate welfare and the privileged class, I hope that our party gets back to the. And I think you see that nationally. The candidates that are the rising stars are the ones that are actually standing up and fighting for the working class. So, as a Democratic libertarian, I want to tell you that I am going to continue to support
Democratic
real
libertarian.
Democrat.
I like that title.
But I also understand the value of third parties. I've learned so much from you about and a lot of things that we have in common as a progressive Democrat who's for medical cannabis, ending wars.
Right.
Immigration, those things you and I see eye to
That's
eye,
right.
and that's
Yeah,
what we
so-
need to
so
keep
many
having this
things.
conversation.
And we're gonna bring in Alan Smith
Okay.
at some point.
All
He's
right.
the Green Party candidate.
Okay.
I've reached out to him. We're gonna meet.
Excellent.
We're gonna talk because he's got some important ideas too.
Awesome.
And I think
Sure.
that we can't let the Republicans steal all the thunder
Well,
on this primary season.
I'm going to end this segment because we've got to move, but
Yeah.
let me tell you the reason that what really tipped me over the top on why we needed a new chairperson was because I was at an event where you and I were at, and we were challenging a candidate to speak out and say something in support of our LGBT community. As an LGBT person, it is important that if there is a person who runs as a Democrat, that they have the courage to say that my family
Matters.
matters. And this person who was running did not say anything and still has not said anything.
Who's still running?
So we made the decision to be out in front of an event they were having, and it was like this secret event that they were going to meet with some very select few LGBT members to try to give the impression that that person had had always supported, which I know was not true.
Wow.
So we were out there trying to get this person to at least, we didn't think the person was going to come out and talk to us, at least come out and say, I believe LGBT people have just as much right to be in our professional military and to be in veterans and to be treated equally. That's all we wanted that person to say. They wouldn't say it. So during that event, our current Democratic Party chairperson was walking by, and Jeff Scott, who said, hi, how are you? And that person turned to you and said, I don't shake the hands of Republicans, and just walked by. And I thought to myself, this person is the face of my party, the party that is telling people we are inclusive, we are open. All you had to do was say, nice to meet you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Best of luck in your election.
It's
Correct.
all manners.
That's right.
Exactly.
And that's, you know what?
And
I
that
have to
point,
put
I
credit
said,
to.
this is not acceptable.
I have to put credit to Pittenger and
Yes.
Mark Harris because they've always, even
Yes.
though they're running,
He-
they
When
might
they
not
ran,
agree with us.
They shook my hand.
Yep.
They were polite to me.
Yep.
And I've said this. I've said this that, and Mark Harris has gone against completely everything that my family stood for. He even had a big battle with my former pastor, who was against Amendment 1 at the time.
Yeah.
But Mark Harris was always at least polite to me.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And
That
I
is part of
respected
manners.
that.
I was on WBT
Yeah.
radio last Sunday morning. It'll be broadcast
Sure.
again this coming Sunday. But I made the exact same point.
Mhm.
Harris is in hot water,
Yeah.
clearly,
Yeah.
legal and health-wise. But he and his staff were always
Very inclusive,
courteous,
yeah.
courteous
Very
and mannered,
courteous.
and that counts a lot.
Exactly.
That's right.
And I felt that way with some of the Republicans that are running. And we're going to jump past the ICE raids. ICE raids obviously are continuing. We've been having these meetings in the community. Please go on to the City of Charlotte government Facebook page, and they've been live streaming these events. One of the concerns that I had, and if anybody wants to talk very briefly, because we're running very over and we got to keep this very short, is that the reason that we were having these meetings, and we needed to be clear, we're having these meetings because the mayor did not sign the same letter that the other mayor signed, and when
Or
we
didn't
asked
make
her
a public statement.
and didn't make a public statement. So when we asked her about it, she, in her words, she said she decided to form a committee,
An immigration committee.
immigration committee, to help her understand the concerns of the community, but also help her
Wow.
formulate whether she needs to make it. So that was really what the committees. Now they have turned into.
Well, actually, not
Yeah.
Anita if she needs to
Yeah.
make it. This committee meetings,
Which
and
is
it's
important.
open
Yep.
to all our immigrants,
Yes.
not only exclusive just for the Latinos.
Yes.
It's open to everyone. It's to come up with a plan of how to better serve our community within the city limitations.
And what I wanted people to understand last night during the meeting was
Uh-huh.
because we've been to several of these meetings, and I've seen how the meetings have changed to almost just like another immigration task force.
Correct.
We already did an immigration task force. Those proposals were proposed to the
City council.
and so that has already been done. And what I've said is we don't have to reinvent
Now
the
you
wheel
gotta
in
keep
Charlotte.
in mind. You
Yeah.
gotta keep in mind that the immigration task force wasn't open to the public.
That's right.
Was
That's
not didn't
That's right.
ask the advice for the public.
So-
It was among leadership.
The reason we're all saying this is
Mhm.
because there has been concern at these meetings from our African American brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our immigrants that are not Latinx. We happen to be the face of it right now because of the ICE raids. There have been concerns on why is everyone just talking about the Latinx immigrants? We're immigrants too. But and I don't want us to pit each other against each other because of the reason that we're meeting is because our mayor and our city council refused to issue a statement. That was
See,
why we're meeting.
and you
The
gotta
immigration part is a separate issue.
you gotta keep
Yeah.
in mind that a lot of these folks are hearing things
That aren't true.
that aren't
Yeah.
true. Because yes, there's been two different meetings.
Yeah.
We as Latinx
Yeah.
leaders have requested to meet with mayor and
Yeah.
city council individually in a private way
Sure.
to ourselves because we want to be the voice of our community.
Yes.
Now everyone is welcome to schedule, to request, and demand whatever the need is because Indians, Africans, Asians, they don't have the same need as we do.
Well,
So
they do. It's
everyone
just
has
different.
to, in a different
yeah.
way.
Let me just add
Sure.
one point to this. You know, there is an 8 or 9 week Republican primary sprint.
Yes.
There's 10 Republican candidates. Call them on
Yes,
this
to
issue.
find out what
Call
they
them
stand.
on
We need an
ICE.
immigration
Call them
reform.
on the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Ask them about immigration. Ask them about the wall. You know, we will invite all of them here. Let's see
Yes.
if any of them come. But there's 10 Republicans. We've got 8 weeks. There's only 8 slots.
Yeah.
But they're all welcome to come here,
Yeah.
and we can talk about those issues.
I mean, didn't we say call the Democratic nominee and ask him where he stands?
Now you gotta keep in mind, immigration law is a federal law, so sometimes there's limited action between the city
And that's what-
and that.
That's right. But
So-
these
But
are
these are
congressional
Yeah, those
seats.
are congressional,
That's-
which we
and then-
need
That's why
them
it's
to call.
important to know where they stand and to
Correct.
get them on record so that they're
Correct.
conversant in these issues. Dan Bishop, the
yes.
the nominal
Yep.
front runner,
But we
is-
need to do
is-
something
is for a
local.
wall.
Yeah.
And
And
he
Stoney issued
yeah.
something. Okay, we're running short, and we can always talk about NCO9 because there's so much to always talk
That's
about.
right. We can.
So basically, what I've told people, and I got some flack from someone who was following me. I said, go to all of the candidates from their
Debates.
Facebook pages, like all their Facebook, or follow them. Find out what they have to say, find out where they are, and understand we have a Democratic candidate, nominee, probably more by default nominee.
Right. Yeah.
We have Libertarian, we have a Green Party
We
person.
only have
That's
one
right.
Democratic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There
No
was
one. No one entered the
there
grace.
was no. So it's important that we understand all of them. And this is what I said
That's the hard
to a
part.
person last night. My biggest concern is, and I wish that we had had someone who ran against our Democratic nominee, because it is so hard to keep Democrats excited when you're not talking about Democratic issues. And if we had someone to run against the current Democratic person, we would have been talking about Democratic issues. And since the Republicans are going to be basically monopolizing the airways for the next 8 to 9 weeks, their base is going to be so energized. I don't see how we're going to win as a Democrat in the election in September, because our Democratic nominee won't even say, I am a Democrat. And that really, really concerns me. So from a
You know what really
strategic
concerns
standpoint,
me?
I want to make sure that we get some of the Republicans to maybe move over a little bit on some of these issues.
Yeah, because when I'm encouraging people to vote, to come out and support and go into their platforms,
Yeah.
read their stuff. And when I go into one of our candidates, the only candidate that we have for Democratic District 9, you know, and I'm not a
You're already going to
candidate.
get me in trouble.
I don't care. I'm here to speak the truth
All
and
right.
make everybody
No,
accountable
don't
of their
say it.
job.
Don't say it.
You know, it's sad when you see in his page saying we need reinforced physical barriers with the technology.
So our don't Democratic nominee believes in border walls.
And
Our
we
own
need to
Democratic
fund-
nominee
we
wants
need
to
to
fund
fund
ICE.
To improve ICE.
That is completely against our platform.
Yeah.
Completely
That is not
against
right.
our.
So, but
As a Democrat.
so we've had these discussions before,
Sure.
and we're on board with a form of barrier, a form
Yeah.
of surveillance. We know there should be security.
Yeah.
There's a whole host of other issues.
Yeah.
But what we're not on board with is the extended funding of
Of ICE.
ICE and
Okay.
their basic
We-
That's what it is. I'm in favor
Yes.
of securing
Okay.
the borders.
We-
I'm
That's
in
right.
favor of that. Yes, I am.
we-
Let me tell you though, I'm in favor securing both borders. Don't just come and vote on my
we
Texas
are running out of
border.
time, and I apologize. We did start a little late, so I have to remind our director that we're going to go to Constitutional Quote of the Week.
Yes.
If everyone please refers to the Constitution, I believe we are going to
Number
Amendment
13.
Can I start out with
You
what
can.
okay, good.
Yes.
Sure.
It's about slavery
Okay.
and involuntary servitude. Here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, we had a lot more voluntary servitude and indentured servants in the old days, and when the city started 250 years ago. However, today's modern version of slavery really involves sex slavery and
Human trafficking
and
or-
human
okay.
trafficking. And I think that when we look at the Amendment 13, that we should keep those men and women who are abused physically and tortured, that they should be protected by this amendment
Included.
of the Constitution.
Okay. Do you want to read that section? Okay.
Okay. Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
That is Amendment 13, and I'm sure many people will have very strong feelings with that, because basically, if you read that, it almost says that you could be subject to
Slave.
involuntary service if you are a victim of a crime, and that is what I don't know my history.
Okay, that refers to people who are in prisons in order to make some money. They work in the. They used to, actually, if you look at Providence Road and all these little medians, I watched the chain gangs build those medians when I was 7 years old, and
That's
with the
interesting.
man standing there with the gun, you
Wow.
know, watching them and watching them work. So, I mean, when we think about, oh, wasn't it wonderful? You know, people say, oh, we should have more of those like on Providence Road. And as an older person now, I'm going, I don't know that was the best use of those people.
Yeah.
However, they were paid for it. And I think that goes, but you can ask people to work when they're incarcerated.
Yeah.
And so that's kind
I
of
think
where
they
that came
still
from.
do it, guys. I've
Yes, they
seen
do.
them pick up litter.
Yeah, but they're
after
getting
the-
paid for it, and it's not the
It's
same
not a-
thing.
yeah, of course.
I mean, they're not wearing chains and they're hooked
No,
to
it's
each other.
not like
you know.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. you're
So,
right.
so that was number 13, and it looks like we have run out of time. I want to just once again remind everyone to please support our Pandulce sponsor, which is Mrs. Blau Catering. Heidi Blau is the owner, 704-805-0269. Blau Catering, please, for any event that you have, any quinceañera, any office function, or if you just want some sweetbread, or we call it Pandulce, over the weekend for your family. If you would like to sponsor one of our upcoming projects, please call Kali Lily's event coordinator and talent agency, 980-477-1513. All that information is on our Facebook page. And it looks like we have actually accomplished everything today. Does anybody want to tell us where they are next so we can go ahead and end the show? And while you're doing that, I'm going to play Alexa. Alexa,
I want
play
to make
Pandora.
sure to invite the whole community tomorrow at Guadalupe Catholic Church on Tacasigi from 8 to 10.
Yeah, speak
Your
up.
voice Your voice is needed tomorrow.
Where are you, Jeff?
I'll be pushing out my new website and my new fundraising drive to try to get some national exposure through CrowdPack, which is a fundraising website.
Excellent.
I will be at East Mecklenburg High School on Saturday.
And we'll be there
And-
supporting you guys. Yes.
And also I will be putting on my planning commissioner hat and going to the neighborhood meetings, and we encourage you to do so on the 2040 plan and other things. Be
Awesome.
a part of us.
Excellent.
Great.
So thank you for joining us, everyone, and thank you for those who are going to be watching us later. Thank you for staying tuned. We'll see you next Wednesday with some more special guests and some great topics, and we'll try to
Adios.
keep on time.
Bye.
So once again, have a great
Buenos
CafeYPanDulce, and we will be publishing our after show with all the cameras we have here later on.
Canta y no llores, porque cantando se alegran cielito lindo los corazones.